Hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Hero of Kendrickstone. We have ahead of us Chapter 7, Dire Findings. Last time we managed to get the bandit back, save Sir Edmund, and even get the little stone that the court wizard asked from us. So I'm very happy about that, and I think we can now move onwards to the Chapter 7. You spend the next month watching the city die. Oh god. It's just a lovely start. Even as the world outside the walls bursts with the robust greenery of spring, Kendrickstone withers within its stone bulwarks. The caravans that normally come every spring to rejuvenate the city are nowhere to be seen. The roads are too dangerous, and the bandits in the woods seems to be everywhere at once. Without trade from the outside, the city cannot grow enough food to feed itself, let alone maintain anything save the bare essentials of existence. The last of the shops close, and the alehouses and taverns are empty at night. Every day, more houses lie abandoned as their inhabitants flee in a desperate bid to escape the spiraling deprivation. Every day, the pulse of the city grows fainter. With every day, the great city's demise draws closer at hand. As soon as the last of the snow melts, the patrols begin again. Only this time, every single servant and squire must ride out with their knights. Even common wall guards are pulled from their posts in a desperate attempt to increase the number of sorties and reclaim the roads. The futility of such attempts becomes apparent within a week or two. No matter how heavily the knights and their retinues patrol the roads, the bandits always seem to be a step ahead, striking when the patrols are past and disappearing into the woods, leaving only the corpses and the ransacked carts of those brave or foolish enough to take the roads to Kendrickstone. The mood in the guard room grows more and more tense, more and more desperate. Though you and your fellow servants of the Knights of Kendrickstone are still fed from the Duke's own stockpiles and houses within the walls of the keep, the impending demise of the city they have sworn to protect, you have sworn to protect, weighs heavily on everyone. Your mistress seems to become even more driven, more determined, more grimly set to end the bandit threat. She pushes for more patrols and more training. Thankfully, you're strong enough to keep up, and your knowledge of woodcraft stands you in good stead. Every night, you return to your keep exhausted, and every morning you wake up again to do the same, seemingly pointless thing. Your life has become an endless grinding routine, a losing war against an enemy you cannot ever find. That is, until one morning. Oh, that sounds promising. We're not depressed, at least that. Dame Mildred is waiting for you in the courtyard as always. This time, however, she's dressed not in her male encircled, but in court dress, soft hose, and a belted, ankle-length gown in the colors of Sunny Mercy. Zygmunt? She calls out as you approach. This morning's training is cancelled. Go back inside, take your armor off, and change into your best clothes. That stops you in your tracks. Dame Mildred hasn't let anything interrupt morning training in the month. What's going on, you ask? The knight reaches into her sleeve and pulls out a folded piece of vellum. The Duke of Kendrickstone is holding a council meeting in an hour, and we've been invited. You've never seen the Duke's private council chambers before. Even though you have spent nearly an entire year living in Kendrickstone's keep, you have never once seen the inner sanctum where the ruler of the city makes his most important decisions. Honestly, you expected something bigger. After the tall, imposing arch of the keep's main entrance and the vaulted expanse of the great hall, the council chamber is simply a room, no bigger than the inside of a peasant's cottage. The only thing that gives away its significance are the guards at the two doors and the faint blue glow of protective wards along each wall. At the center is a small oaken table with a handful of heavy, high-backed chairs around it. Already, the places around the table are filled by 3 others. 2 of the other faces are familiar. William of Hallowford is dressed in a robe and mantle expensive enough to bankrupt most minor nobles. Izan of Corellandris wears North Corellandian garb, but what do you suppose is his official uniform as court wizard? Last of all, there is, of course, the Duke of Kendrickstone himself. Wulfric II, Duke of Kendrickstone, would have once been an immense man, tall and bull-shouldered. Even still, you can see the remnants of the mighty muscles with which he once made his name as a great hero. Now though, age has taken all but the remnants. Duke Wulfric is an old man, and his years and responsibilities have greyed his hair, wrinkled his brow, and stooped his back. An assassin took one of his arms not 5 years ago, and nearly 40 years of rule seem to have taken much else besides. Still, the Duke is impressive, not for his long-aged body, but for the power he still wields and the reputation he once forged alongside companions like Elaine of Sonnemercy. What do you think of him? I am honored to be the presence of such a powerful man. The Duke did much good as a hero. I seek to follow his example. He was better off as an adventurer than a lord. Everything this old man has, I want. I am honored. You keep your thoughts from your face as you approach the table. The guards step outside and close the door behind them as you and your mentor take your places. My friends, the Duke begins, his voice deep and resonant, even through the mustiness of age. You all know of our city's plight. For a year now, these bandits in black have plagued the people of our city, first as a mere nuisance, then as a major threat, and now as a danger to Kendrickstone's very existence. Our efforts to combat this scourge have been great. He spares Dame Mildred a meaningful glance, but not enough. Now as our city stands on the brink of annihilation, they send out their demands. The Duke produces a scroll, tattered and stained, but still very much legible. This message was attached to an arrow shot from the woods. It reads thus: To His Grace, Duke Wulfric of Kendrickstone. You know that my forces have your city's very life within its hands. No trade, no supplies, and no help will come to Kendrickstone unless I will it. Open your gates and submit to me, and we may speak of your city's continued survival. Refuse this first and only offer, and you shall watch your people starve and your city crumble to nothing. Milius Blackclad. It is Hisan who speaks first. So my predecessor has indeed returned to wreak his revenge. What? We knew this for months now. God damn it, game. Dame Mildred nods. I knew I should have gutted the bastard when I had the chance, she snarls. I am loath to agree with a knight of Kendrickstone, William of Hallowford begins, in his customarily soothing tones, but I must concur. He turns to Mildred, his eyes alight. You should have gutted the bastard when you had the chance. The Duke leans forward, his expression defeated. We may have no other choice but to accept these terms, as abhorrent as it may seem. Hisan grits his teeth, and Dame Mildred's hand balls into her fist, so hard that her knuckles go white. Never! Not so long as any. The Duke raises his hand in a calming gesture. There's little food left in the city. We shall perhaps last another. He turns to William, who nods slightly. 2 weeks before large parts of the city begin to starve. The Duke's voice grows stronger and steadier now. As terrible as it may seem to submit ourselves to Milius and his bandit army, I will not see my people starve to death in their homes if that is the alternative. The room goes quiet as you all digest the Duke's words. To give up one of the greatest cities in the Concordat to a vengeful mage and a bandit army. Could you even consider it? Only if it will prevent mass suffering. If the Duke orders it, so be it. Not a chance, they'll destroy all I have gained here. Who cares, so long as I make it out alive? Only if it prevents mass suffering. You can understand the Duke's dilemma. If he submits, hundreds may be killed or robbed as the bandits plunder their way through the city. But if he doesn't, starvation will take the lives of thousands who will suffer greatly as they die. William of Hallowford breaks the silence. There must be another way, a third option, he says, a hint of urgency slipping into his voice. He has the most to lose. He derives all his wealth and power from the city's people. Duke Wulfric nods. That's why I've brought you here. My finest knight, my court wizard, the man who runs my markets from the shadows, and, he gestures to you, the most well-known of the few adventurers left in Kendrickstone. The old Duke looks at all four of you meaningfully. We must put aside whatever differences we have and find a third option. Dame Mildred nods back. Then I think I speak for every knight in your service, your grace, when I say that we stand ready to carry out any plan. She glares sidelong at William, no matter who it comes from. The well-groomed man glares back. I can say the same for my organization. If it will save the city, my resources are at your disposal. Isan of Corolandre smiles then, the grin of a gambler with a winning hand. Then it is best I tell you all I have something that can even the odds. As I am sure you all must know by now, Isan begins. I began following up on my predecessor's research when I took this post. Melios of Concordat, Melios Blackclad now I suppose, had a theory that the Flowering Court had perfected some sort of teleportation magic. Nonsense, interjects William of Hallowford. Teleportation is impossible. Isan shakes his head. On the contrary, it is quite possible. According to my predecessor's notes, he concluded that the ruined stone circles in the forest outside the city are, in fact, teleportation rings. I believe Melios Blackclad is using those rings to move his bandits from one side of the forest to the other instantly. The Duke nods. Yes, I read your report. He turns to you now. You say the bandit camp disappeared in a flash of light? Before you can answer, Isan shakes his head. Not disappeared. Transported to one of the other ruins. Before I knew this, I had been trying to recreate Melios' experiments on a teleportation without resorting to the measures he took. But two things stymied me. One was my inability to recreate the material used by the Flowering Court to build their circles. The other was even more worrying. The wizard takes a breath and sighs. You see, the teleportation process is not perfect. When a person's mind and body are torn from one place of the world and thrown into another, some parts of the spirit are lost. A person's mind is twisted, made cold, and numbed to compassion and gentleness. Eventually, the mind recovers, but if a person is subjected to such a process repeatedly, the Duke nods gravely, their mind remains twisted. If they get within the walls, they will show us no mercy. Isan nods gravely back. Yes. So, says Dame Mildred, her voice edged with growing frustration, how is any of this supposed to help even the odds? The court wizard raises a placating hand. Patience, Lady Knight. Let me explain. When our young friend returned with his account of the bandit camp, I refocused my efforts. Now that I knew the bandits were using the teleportation circles to move their camp, I worked to find a way to track when each circle was used. I believe I have succeeded. The Duke leans forward, his one hand gripping the arm of his chair. Are you saying? Isan nods. I believe I will soon be able to track the location of the bandit camp at will. Naturally, Isan continues, I have a plan to use this to our advantage. Dame Mildred nods. I've got an idea too. Interesting, William of Hallowford says. I too have a way in which we might use this to end the bandit threat. The Duke smiles for the first time since the meeting began. Good, good. I also have a plan. Something daring and risky, as no doubt all of your schemes are. Something I would have readily accepted in my youth. The old man breathes deeply and shakes his head. But it is not we who must carry out these plans, I suspect. Once again, the Duke's cold blue eyes settle on you. That job is for the young. The others at the table nod. Fuck, why? Duke Elfric's gaze does not waver. Then, if it is our young adventurer who must be the tip of the spear, it would only be fitting for his to hear each plan and choose which approach to take. You find yourself breathing just a little quicker. In short, the Duke is giving you the responsibility of not only choosing, but carrying out a plan that might save or doom the city. No pressure. Okay, let's start with Dame Mildred. The knight nods and leans forward. Normally, in a situation like this, when we know where the enemy is, we would muster the knights and hit the bandits with everything we've got. William of Hereford cast a sidelong glance at the knight. So what's stopping you? Surely the prowess of the much-wanted Knights of Kendrickstone would prove more than sufficient to deal with a handful of bandits. They muttered not. It would. You know it. I know it. And Milius Blackclad knows it. Which is the problem. If he sees all of our knights coming at him, he'll just move his camp to another circle, and it will take us a day to follow him. The knight shakes her head. I think we should split up the knights into 3 groups, 1 to each of the magic circles, not currently holding the bandit camp. If the bandits try to escape to another circle, we'll have the knights waiting for them. To the camp itself, we send a force that Milius won't consider a threat. Isan leans forward. You mean someone who was all but unknown at the time of my predecessor's exile, like Daemodor turns towards you. Yes, absolutely. Insanity, William of Hereford exclaims. You expect the boy to attack a bandit camp? He'll be cut down in a heartbeat. Daemodor shakes her head. Not if he moves quickly, fights well, and doesn't let the bandits use their numbers against him. Then he can get in, slay Milius the Blackclad quickly, and get out. The knight turns to the Duke. There is one other thing. For this plan to work, our chosen agent must have every advantage. Your Grace, I request permission to allow this adventurer to take with his the Sword of Kendrick Giant Slayer. The Duke hisses in surprise, but after a long pause he nods approval. If this adventurer is found worthy by the wards that guard the blade, then he has my permission. Kendrick Giant Slayer's sword? This plan sounds dangerous. I want to hear some of the other plans. Kendrick Giant Slayer's sword. Daemodor shakes her head. No, the sword of Kendrick Giant Slayer. She replies with a near reverent tone. The very same blade that killed the stone giant of Colmere. You know the tale, almost everyone does, of how Kendrick Giant Slayer slew a giant made of blood-red stone back in the first great age of heroes over 2 centuries ago. Legend has it that he defeated the stone giant with a sword whose blade shone like the sun and could cut steel like water, but that sword is nothing but a legend, surely. I can imagine what you're thinking, my boy, the Duke says. I can assure you, the sword is very real, buried with the Giant Slayer himself in a tomb outside the city. Powerful magics protect the sword, but if you can get past the wards... The talk of magical defenses gets the court wizard's attention. What kind of wards, exactly? The Duke shakes his head. I have not seen the tomb myself, but legend speaks of stone walls that shifts like sand and powerful guardian spirits. You're not sure you like the sound of that. A centuries-old tomb guarded by who knows what, but if you can get past... A magic sword, a genuine magic sword, once wielded by a great hero. If anything could get you through the camp of bandits alive, it is that. This plan sounds dangerous, so I want to hear some of the other plans. What is Master Isan's idea? Isan turns to you. My plan is very simple. It will, however, require at least a basic knowledge of magic. You shake your head. I'm sorry, I don't know any magic. The court wizard's expression fails. Then I'm afraid my plan is worthless. What's William of Hereford's plan? My plan is rather simple, really. The well-groomed man explains as he plucks a gold piece from his belt and begins bouncing it across his knuckles. The mage is the one leading the bandits, and he's the only one with the ability to operate the magic circles. We know where he is, so all our young compatriot has to do is to get into the camp and find Milius Blackclad. Daemodor's eyes narrow. Then what? William of Hereford snorts in derision. Come now, Lady Knight. You know as well as I do what happens next. It starts with S and ends with slitting his throat. That's murder, the knight rolls. So if you cut a foe's throat, it's murder, but if you stab him from the front, as you knights train every day to do, it's honorable combat? William responds. Dame Mildred quickly changes the subject. Fine, how does our assassin get in then? The well-groomed man smiles. He'll need a disguise, and maybe a password too, to get past the sentries. No, I don't like this plan. I want to hear about your plan, Your Grace. The Duke nods and turns to the court wizard. Master Isan, when the magic circle is activated, it takes every person in that circle elsewhere, doesn't it? Isan nods. Everyone and everything, Your Grace. Duke Wulfric strokes his chin. That would mean that if we were to get a force within the circle, they would be unable to escape from it, even if that force were, say, a dozen knights, correct? The wizard nods again. That is so, Your Grace. The problem is getting those knights close enough without being detected by sentries or guards. If our soldiers are detected at a distance, Marius Blacklad will be able to get his bandits away before we can get close. The Duke nods. Then it seems that the key would be to convince the sentries that nothing is amiss until it is too late. How would I fool the bandit sentries, Your Grace? The old Duke's eyes narrows. We have a prisoner who you helped capture, if I remember correctly. You know, that is right, Your Grace. You might be able to get some information out of her, perhaps. The old man muscles. Muses. Maybe even convince her to take our side. What happens afterwards? The Duke smiles. After you get a dozen heavily armed knights into the midst of these bandits, you mean? Violence, I think, Dame Mildred interjects. A great deal of violence. In a very short span of time. The knight smiles rather viciously. The Duke gives her a look. We'll arrest the ones that survive, of course, she adds sheepishly. I'm ready to choose a plan. You think it over. Each plan has its own strengths and weaknesses, and requires its own set of skills and abilities. Each plan carries with it a colossal risk. You know you must choose carefully, and pick the course of action you are best suited to carry out. Failure is not an option. In the end, you decide to go with... not the crime lord's plan, not the court wizard's plan, because we cannot even know what it is. The knight's plan or the duke's plan. This one is basically us going solo against them. And this one is... well, basically doing the same thing, but with more than one knight. I think I'm gonna go with the knight's plan. Because, you know, loyalty to Dame Mildred is high, and we should be able to get a magic sword. Which is, in its own... a reason to do it. Dame Mildred Pryan has the best chance of succeeding, you say finally. Duke Wulfric nods. Very well, so be it. He intones with a note of finality. I shall have a map showing the way to the tomb of Kendrick Giant Slayer sent to you by tomorrow morning. I suggest you take the day to prepare yourself. One by one, the old man looks to each of you at the table. Today we have made a decision that may doom or save the city. Let us hope they have been the right ones. This council meeting is dismissed. The guards open the door, flooding the dark chamber with the light of the outside world. Over the next few moments, each of you stand up and makes your way out of the council room. Zygmunt, hold on a second. You turn at the sound of your knightly mistress's voice. She tries to say something but stops herself before her words leave her mouth. She takes a breath and begins again. When I offered you a spot in my retinue all those months ago, I never realized how much of a help you would be to me. You have proven to be an exceptional squire and... Her scared face settles into a smile. A good friend. Now it's my turn to help you. She extends her hand towards you. When you seek Kendrick Giant Slayer's sword tomorrow, and when you go to face that insane wizard and his bandit army, I'd be more than happy to lend you my sword arm if you're willing to have it. I'd be honored. I can do it on my own. I'll need to move fast and your heavy armor will slow me down. I'd be honored. You clasp the knight's hand, no longer merely mistress and servant, but two sibling adventurers on a cusp of a great quest. Dame Mildred's smile grows wider, and her battle-scarred face seems 10 years younger. Thank you. It's been a long time since I've gone on a real adventure. Maybe it will do me some good. You spend the rest of the day in preparation. You test your weapons, and then clean them, and then test them and clean them again. You examine your armor for any points of weaknesses or fraying edges. You look over the contents of your pack, and then you do it all again. You won't be able to afford failure, which means you can afford to have your equipment fail you. By the time you are done, it is already dark, and your stomach is rumbling. You eat a quick meal, and then go to bed. You go to bed thinking of your year in Kendrickstone. You think of your many successes, of all the jobs and quests you have tested your skills, and of all the times you have emerged triumphant. You think of your reputation, which, despite all your hardships, you have managed to build up bit by bit. You think of the modest wealth you've managed to earn through the courage and daring. You think of all these things, but not for long. Soon you are sound asleep, confident that tomorrow will bring one crowning victory to join those that you have already won. This concludes Chapter 7. We have managed to choose the plan, and in Chapter 8 we will go through with it. So wish me luck in this final battle of Chapter 8.